Alex had never felt so terrified before. Well, apart from the time he awoke on board an alien ship light years from home, but even then he could take control of the situation. He escaped his captor, the Bug Queen, and all her minions, and fought off their repeated attempts to recapture him. It took space bears in suits of armour to finally bring him into custody again, and apparently, like Alex, they weren't too fond of the bugs either. Here, he had no such control, nor any opportunity to seize it. His prison cell was actually some kind of landing pod, and nearly without any warning it had departed on its one-way trip towards the surface of Sardis. Only after another mind link with Thello did Alex learn they had reached Sardis orbit, preparing him for the seat unfolding, and the POS spinning him around for the final pre-programmed burn. It didn't have any control sim to pilot it down, or even any screens to monitor his rapidly decreasing altitude. He wasn't any astronaut who knew how to fly a re-entry from orbit, not to mention in an alien capsule, but the option would have at least brought him some comfort. Instead, all he got was a tiny little islet, scourged by superheated flames as the capsule thundered through the upper atmosphere, shaking so violently that everything blurred into free. Alex hated nothing more than to watch things spiral out of his control. He climbed to his safety harness with a white-knuckle grip tighter than steel, and took quick, shallow breaths, his lungs crushed by the G-load and his own fright. The acceleration slackened, enough for him to quit gritting his teeth and groaning his displeasure with the situation. The flames disappeared from the islet above, replaced by a blue sky. He sat in the silent capsule, counting the seconds. Didn't this thing have parachutes? Or some way to slow down? Why wasn't it deploying them? Was something wrong with his pod? Was Sardis a Deathworld because they smacked prisoners into it at 100 miles an hour? In the frenzied moment, any answer could be true. He was thrown upwards into the harness, while outside he heard the thrusters roar. To his sweet relief, he felt the acceleration cancel out to be almost imperceptible. Then the thrusters cut out. He screamed as he felt his stomach leap into freefall again, but just a second later, his capsule landed on the ground with a solid thunk. The hatch blew off in explosive bolts, dousing him in harsh sunlight compared to the darkened capsule. He didn't waste any time getting unbuckled and crawling out. He never wanted to repeat that experience again. His feet, still encased in those shoes the bears had made for him, landed on short, scrubby, violet grass. He took a deep inhale of the foreign air, crisp like a brisk autumn morning. For a Deathworld, it seemed awfully livable to him. The air certainly wasn't toxic. He tore up a fistful of the grass and rubbed it between his fingers. It wasn't sharp or poisonous either. No. Judging by all the plant life he saw, a whole forest of arrowhead-shaped trees awaited him on the slope below. This was quite a thriving place. His capsule had landed on a windswept hill, about halfway to the summit. He felt reluctant to leave his only good shelter, but he had to get a better view of the terrain from up above. He took a look inside his pod one last time, to see if they gave him anything useful to survive with, like matches, a knife, or some rations, but to his dismay, all he saw was the empty chair. Still, there was some good materials to be harvested. The seat cushion would make a good pillow, at least. He reached the top and surveyed the area. The forest spread around a curving river behind him, while these hills circled a broad, purple plain, spread out before the distant white-capped mountains, leaving plenty of dells obscured from his observation here. From one or two rose thin curls of smoke, just like the occasional smoke trail that broke the forest canopy. It would take a good day's march to investigate any of them. Like flaming meteors, dozens of capsules streaked across the sky over him. He missed the two silently plummeting through the sky behind him till it was almost too late. He heard thrusters roar, this time reverberating in his chest as much as they rang his ears, and ducked as the pair of paws completed their final descents just over his head. They touched down in the rocky gorge, cut out from this side of the hill by a trickling creek. Alex crept down from the skyline a little ways to the cover of a boulder. He didn't want to silhouette himself and give away his position. The two paws blew off their hatches. Alpha 1 scurried a short file of red-brown bugs, 12 long. Together they lifted out of the capsule the same ship queen that had kidnapped Alex, if her swollen abdomen was any indication. It must have been a cram ride down. They set her down and formed a close perimeter around her. From the other pod emerged two other bugs he recognized. A single red-brown one and its bigger navy-blue relative, the ones who had helped him. They shared their capsule with the four other bugs he had helped them rescue from asphyxiation. But after some antenna twitching and mandible snapping, those four walked away from the navy-blue bug to rejoin the ship queen. Only one of them dared hesitate. "Come on," Tshirt chittered. "I'm your team leader." "Not anymore," Riek snapped. "You betrayed the colony." With that, she peeled away, crossing a stony brook to attend to the Ship Queen. "Harass? Gok?" Treat begged. "Soldier drones!" called the Ship Queen. "Fall in and escort me!" "Sorry, Treat. I've got orders," Frost said, and turned away. "Same here," Gog trotted off. Only Creek, Treat's classmate and closest friend, remained. Treat placed her foreclaw on her shoulder. "Please, Creek. She already threw you to the jaws of death once. What do you think she'll do with you now?" "Treat, we were bred for the jaws of death. We were bred to die for the good of the colony." "It wasn't for the good of the colony," Treat shot back. "She was venting the whole ship. She killed half of the ship drones on her own because the thing even got to them. The only reason she stopped is because we held the suspect's drive hostage. She'd have wiped out the whole colony." The outburst was loud enough for the whole echoing gorge to hear. The ship drones beside the Ship Queen glanced at each other. Creek gingerly removed Treat's quaking foreclaw from her shoulder. "As long as the Queen lives, the colony lives. I'm sorry, Treat." With that, she left Treat alone with the ship drone, Dro. Two stood on this side of the creek, 18 on the other. "Maybe she'll take us in," Dro quietly suggested, fierce and rising. "If we beg for forgiveness, maybe Her Majesty would—" "Kill those two who betrayed you and your sisters! Defend the colony!" cried the Ship Queen. Creek stopped halfway between the Ship Queen and Treat. She turned around, slowly, and faced Treat. Her eyes were full of regret. A pungent odour wafted across the brook. "You can't! Creek, it's me, Treat!" "Don't make this any more difficult than it has to be, Treat," Creek replied, moving closer. Ricky, Frost, and Gok flanked her. Treat ushered Little Dro behind her and started backing up towards the cliff face. "I think she needs a reminder, Creek," Ricky sneered. "Even when soldier drones die, they know it's for the good of the colony." Quietly, Treat clicked her mandibles. "Dro, when the fight starts, make a break for it. I'll hold them off as long as I can." "What? No, I can't let you do that. Dro, just do as I say. Let me show them what a real soldier's sacrifice looks like." Alex watched the bugs turn on the pair. He bit his lip and thought for a moment. Their falling paws had led him to the nearest source of running water, the dribbling creek they had just stepped over to encircle their comrade. Of course, there were 5 of them, counting just the big blue ones, and he didn't have a pipe or a gun anymore. To get wounded out here would be a death sentence, harsher than the one he'd already received. Plus, there was that river in the forest, and plenty of vegetation for miles around. There had to be plenty of watering holes he could reach without any incident. Right now, he could walk away and leave them to their fate. But on the other hand, those 2 down there were the only ones who had shown him any kindness on the bug ship. He might need a little of that for whatever awaited him here. He stretched out his legs and took a deep breath. He charged down the hill, more sliding than running in some places, the gorge rising before him at breakneck speed. He stumbled to a stop atop the cliff, narrowly avoiding tumbling over. He dug down low so they couldn't see him. Just below, he could hear the bug's feet clack across the stony riverbed, shuffling around each other, poised to strike. Even if he didn't have a pipe or a gun, he still had 2 weapons that had worked to great effect against those bugs: fear and surprise. He picked up a weighty piece of loose stone and stepped out onto the edge of the cliff. Then, imitating his best great ape, he roared. Creek and the soldier drones froze. On the cliff above them thundered what they dreaded most to meet on this Deathworld. "Go, Dro, now!" Treat chirped. The ship drone broke for the end of the gorge, which climbed up onto the grassy step. Rather than stand and fight, Treat made welcome use of the distraction and ran too. "It can't do anything from up there!" Creek shot Ricky out of her petrified gaze. "Get after them!" Creek bellowed, her own anger scent mingling with a fresh whiff of the soldier drone's putrid fear scent. Riek and the others hastened to obey, but a rock soaring down suddenly broke across Horse's carapace, the blunt force throwing her to the ground. Another took out Gok before Creek could lift their eyes to the thing, which armed itself with another stone from its position on the height. It extended out its forelimb way behind it. In one fluid motion, full of rippling power, it threw the rock towards Ricky, still chasing after Treat and Dro. There was no way it could land that shot, Creek thought. The thing couldn't possibly have an instinctual grasp of the aerodynamic properties of an irregularly shaped chunk of... Ricky flew mandibles first into the creek, bowled over by the expertly thrown rock. Creek saw the thing load another stone into its foreclaw. Her eyes darted to Treat and Dro, now quickly scaling the rockfall that ran it off the gorge on one end. There was no way she would make it to them in time, even without the thing throwing rocks like heat-seeking missiles. She watched in horror as it turned to aim its next shot at the Ship Queen, stretching out his other forelimb as if it were lining up a targeting sight. She ran as fast as she could. "Your Majesty, get down! Ship drones, cover the ship queen!" But no shot ever came. Instead, she heard some kind of odd panting noise from up above. She whirled around. The thing had dropped the rock and started breathing very rapidly. Was it fatigued? But the mouth breathing and the nostril flowing quickly subsided, and the thing's predatory eyes pierced her own instead. That look told her everything she needed to know. Drow and Treat were under his protection now. It scampered off in their direction, taking all control of the situation.